99.9% of electronics are not future-proof. Something that remains identical between film and digital, many things remain identical, but does remain identical, is the future-proof nature of medium format. It is future-proof. The only reason people are still using, like what I used in photography school, 6.7 Pentax, is because the images are incredible. Unfortunately, my days of processing film are over. I've done too much of it, and film now is too freaking expensive, and now you got to scan in the film, and post it up on Facebook or or Instagram. It's just not worth it anymore. But let's be honest. I've had an enormous amount of people tell me, and pre-orders for the for the Fujifilm GFX 100S, which is $6,000, the medium format compact camera, which is the same size as most DSLRs. I've received an enormous amount of feedback from people telling me they're getting it. I just got an email before I made this video from a guy asking me the best place to sell his Nikon D850 because he's buying the Fujifilm GFX 100S. And by the way, there's a new zoom lens for Fujifilm GF mount. I have all the GF mount lenses except for the 120 and the 63, which I sold off because I don't like them. The new lens is going to be a 20 to 35 millimeter, right in that range, somewhere around 20 millimeters to 35 millimeters. By the way, to do the equivalency for full frame, you multiply the GF lenses times 0.78. So like a 100 millimeter lens would be an equivalent full frame lens of 80 millimeters, for example. So you multiply it times 0.78. There's a famous photographer that I know who only prints large. He's shown me pictures of his gallery showings, and most of the prints are 80% the size of a wall. They're absolutely enormous. He uses a GFX 100S. He's getting the uses a GFX 100, and he's getting a GFX 100S. He does a lot of traveling for these big shoots that he does. The megapixel wars are essentially over. Now, medium format, nobody's under the delusion, even though the GFX 100 and 100S are the world's first fast-focusing medium format cameras. Nobody is under the delusion that you're doing photography as squirrels on crack, as I call it, with medium format cameras. You're not. I know it. You know it. It's not about speed when it comes to medium format. Just as a giant earth mover used at like gold mines and coal mines, their top speed is something like 25 miles an hour. They're absolutely enormous. You got to climb up this two-stage ladder just to get into the cockpit. Kind of fascinating. You climb up not one ladder but two ladders just to climb into the cockpit to drive the beast. Those are not the most useful tools in the world because they're fast, or the most desired tools because they're exactly what they're designed to do. Move an enormous amount of dirt. This famous photographer, I'm not going to mention his name, is printing prints as large as a wall. You also have something that's very, very important, and people don't realize that about medium format. They think, well, there's an enormous amount of megapixels there, great dynamic range, requires a lot less enlargement to make the same size print. But one of the huge boons, and I think these foolish YouTubers don't talk about it because they're so clueless, is you have an enormous amount of latitude in post-production and Capture One or Lightroom or Photoshop for manipulation, for cropping, for fudging things, right? Yeah, and it's not really about megapixel count. It is to a certain degree, but it's the amount of fudging you're able to do to get the desired result that you want in post-production editing. You have less with 35 millimeter, you have less with DX. There's just not enough wiggle room there, right? It's kind of like dancers need a really big room with a lot of space so they can fling their bodies around. Well, the larger sensors, regardless of the megapixel count, which is already enormous. I mean, if you can't crucify the shot with 51 megapixels from like a GFX 50S or 50R, you sure as hell can't do it from a 102 megapixel GFX 100 or 100S. You have this enormous amount of latitude in post-production. It makes things easy. I don't know how much post-work you have with raw files, but when you have a nice 27, not this computer, which is kind of slow, my 27-inch 5K iMac, You have so much room to crop the hell out of it, to mess around with layers. You have a lot more room on medium format. You just do. Someone will say, well, I need a faster computer, and if I buy that damn medium format camera, I need... Not really. I mean, I edit GFX 100 files on my MacBook Air. It's only got 16 gig of RAM, 256K hard drive, 256 gig hard drive, excuse me. Real future-proof camera. A lot of people, I mean a lot. I've never seen such an enormous response about a camera other than the Nikon D850 and the XT2, which had an enormous amount of hype, an incredible number of pre-orders. I've told various people, I know a couple of people that work for Fujifilm, and I told them, I said, listen, I'm telling you right now, the amount of hype that people have told me, emails and comments, like I'm getting this damn camera, is absolutely off the hook. Fujifilm made a huge mistake on the GFX 100, and a person that works for Fujifilm told me this. They said that Fujifilm greatly underestimated. They sold a year's worth of cameras in like the first week. They had no idea that so many people would order that camera. The GF lenses are absolutely phenomenal. There's two that I don't like, the 63 and the 120. No big deal. They're perfectly fine. I love the fact that I write the tips and tricks on the GFX cameras, and I've owned them all. I only got rid of the 50S, even though it's an incredible camera, because I just didn't need 3 Fujifilm medium format cameras, my 50R and my GFX 100, which is the only camera I took with me to Florida, by the way, that I just got back from. But the megapixel wars are essentially over. They are. Sony and Fujifilm and Canon have basically mastered the ability to take high frame rate pictures of squirrels on crack, as I humorously call it. Medium format is next level. And if you're making money with photography, and all the money, I keep telling people over and over and over again, unlike what these foolish shills say on YouTube, there's no money in taking pictures of landscapes and hot people. There's just not. The money is in business and product photography. And when you have medium format for business and product photography, where you do a lot of cropping and a lot of messing around, and the client wants the absolute ultimate image, especially since now everybody shops online, and people now want high resolution images of what they plan on buying. You can get high resolution images with doing product photography with a Nikon D850, but there's so much more wiggle room in post-production, and that's what nobody talks about. I swear to God, there's not a single YouTube video, I would have heard about it, there might exist one, but none of the top YouTubers have talked about it. The latitude for post-production editing in medium format is incredible. Okay, I'm not just saying that, that's not my feeling, it's not my belief, it's a fact. It makes things a lot easier. It's kind of like a ballerina who needs to prance around and jump, has a lot more wiggle room to practice analogously, a huge ballroom, an enormous amount of space than she does in like my living room. There's just not that much room to prance and jump around. It makes post-production file editing. I'm scratching myself because I got a bunch of sun down in Florida. It makes your skin crawl when you get too much sun. So if you want to know why I'm scratching my skin, it's sunburn. I can't wait to test out a pre-production GFX 100S. I can proudly say, even though I get no kickbacks from Fujifilm, that I'm the #1 salesperson on the GFX series of cameras. I've always been an enormous medium format fan and will remain so until I die. And Fujifilm's doubled down on the fact that they're not interested in making full frame. And they're not, for many, many valid reasons that I've been talking about for years and years and years. They recently just had another interview doubling down on, stop asking about full frame, we're not doing it. Fujifilm has invested heavily in medium format. So, for all those interested in pre-order the GFX 100, I'll be doing tips and tricks and writing the free section in my free Fujifilm book on the GFX 100. And it is snowing and cold outside, absolutely miserable. At least I'm warm inside here. It's going to take me a day to recover from this trip, but anyway, thanks for watching. My fireplace froze up.